Hello, everyone. This is Louis Almeida, the leader and teacher of the Spinoza and Gurdjieff study group, work group. I'm here in Santa Monica. I'm going to speak about Gurdjieff. And through Ouspensky's book called In Search of the Miraculous. Those who have the book, let's go to page 66. And I want to emphasize the idea that Gurdjieff talks about that man is asleep. And he talks also about the being of man. And what is the being of the individual? As a In Search of the Miraculous, or any of Gurdjieff's books, or Spensky's book, The Fourth Way, or Maurice Nicole's books, the 4 volumes of Maurice Nicole, they all talk about Gurdjieff. And they have come up with some great ideas. In Search of the Miraculous is a book that I focus. And I don't read all of it. I mean, I don't study and uh, follow all of his ideas. What I emphasize is the ideas that relate to human nature directly. I don't talk about the dances, or don't go into the dances or the octaves or the Enneagram. I don't think they relate to what I do. I found that Gurdjieff, his ideas about human nature is profound, truly profound. And this book is to be studied. It's not a book like a novel that you go through and imagine that you grasp what he's talking about. I work with students who have been exposed to Gurdjieff for, say, 10, 20, 30 years. And I'll ask a question. Do you know what Gurdjieff talks about, the difference between knowledge and being? They can't really explain it. What is Gurdjieff talking about when man is asleep? What is he talking about? Man is asleep. They don't know. When Gurdjieff talks about that uh, self-observation, what are we observing, and who is doing the observing? So let's start and on page 66, and I'm going to go into depth that very few can understand, and that's why Gurdjieff said something very important. He said, you cannot do this yourself, that it's so easy to lie. It's so easy to imagine that we are understanding and we are growing. Not true. And he's right. And that's where I'll take some of his ideas and develop those ideas. On page 66, Gurdjieff talks about man is asleep. But even before that, let's take there's 4 lines from the top on page 66. It begins with, taking into self, a man's being has many different sides. The most characteristic feature of modern man's being, is the absence of unity in him, and further, the absence of him, of even traces of those things or those properties that he most likely to ascribe to himself. That is, lucid consciousness, free will, and a permanent I, or ego, and the ability to do. It may surprise you if I say that the chief feature of a modern man's being, which explains everything else that is lacking in him, is sleep. Well, that could be misinterpreted. But what he's really saying is that man imagines that he can do, that he has free will, that he has all these imaginary powers. And what Gurdjieff says is, in reality, the chief part of his nature that he's unaware of is that he is asleep, that he is programmed, that he is an automatic machine, a physical machine, yes. The way I see it, they'll help us understand that man, we all have a condition. We have a preconditioned nature. We're born into an environment, for instance, childhood, what to believe in, what to follow. And so we believe in hearsay knowledge, and we have experiences that gives us information about life and existence. So we are programmed early in life how to relate to existence and how to persist in our existence. And so we are given tools. But a lot of these tools are imitative, They're tools that our parents or guardians or the school system or educational system give us to help us persist and exist in life. And some of these tools are pretty good. So some of us are very successful and others are not. But let's go back the second paragraph, which is very important. A modern man lives in sleep. In sleep he is born, and in sleep he dies. About sleep, its significance and its role in life. We'll speak later. But at present, just think of one thing. What knowledge can a sleeping man have? That's a good question. What knowledge can a sleeping man have? What he's saying here is that if you're preconditioned, you have uh, patterns of behavior. You have a level of effort to listen and to apply your mind, or to apply your mind and body to understand. Very limited level of effort. From 1 to 10, we apply an effort probably to the level of 2 or 3. To understand Gurdjieff, you need to go beyond that low level. And that's why a group is so necessary. You cannot do this by yourself because you are living at a low level of effort to apply your mind to follow. And right now you are probably hanging up, don't want to listen. And so there is a great resistance in human nature to exceed the effort of where they are. But let's go again. If we have preconditioned knowledge, how can you absorb new information? What we must do and learn how to do is learn how to look at oneself without judgment. And that is going to be a key. And that's what I do as a teacher and student of Gurdjieff, is to learn how to look at yourself. It's called self-observation. Gurdjieff talks about self-observation of the body. No, we want to look at self-observation of how we think, what emotions are manifested or expressed when they are triggered. The emotion of pain, the emotion of desire, the emotion of anger and hate, of hope and fear, and the emotion of envy. All right, so these emotions can be understood. And when they're understood, this activates the mind. But let's continue with what Gurdjieff was talking about. So we must try to get new knowledge. But he says it's impossible to go and get new knowledge when our mind is asleep. And asleep nature is a passive nature. So we can't incorporate new thoughts when we are all conditioned to behave and react and think who we are and imagine who we are. So the idea is this. And if you think about it, at the same time, remember that sleep is a chief feature of our being. So we live in an automatic pre-programmed nature, a sleep nature, or a semi-conscious state of being. It will once become clear to you that if a man really wants knowledge, he must, first of all, think how to wake. That is, how to change his being. That is so important. And that's what I say about Gurdjieff, so insightful about the condition of human nature. And again, he emphasized we cannot do this on your own. And you might protest. But let me ask you, how well do you really understand Gurdjieff? That man, what does the idea of being asleep mean? Do you understand what you just read? Can you hear what I'm saying? And so this is why it's important to have a teacher to help you understand Gurdjieff. And I could be that teacher for you. But let's go on a little bit further. He says this: exteriorly, man's being has many different sides: activity or passivity, truthfulness or tendency to lie, sincerity or insincerity, courage, cowardice, self-control, irritability, egoism, and readiness for self-sacrifice. Pride, vanity, conceit, laziness, morality, and so on. All these and much more besides make up the being of man. So right here, Gurdjieff is talking about the being of man. The being of man is comprised of all these clarity, confusions, hope, fear, all the emotions, awake state, a sleep state, a semi-conscious state. He's an angry man or a loving man. He understands or is confused. He has courage or he is in fear. So everything, all these ideas, thoughts, make up the being of man's nature. And so that is the being, his nature. Now, because you might ask, I might ask you, do you understand what the being of man is? Now you might begin to understand. Read page 66, and you'll understand what Gurdjieff talks about the being of the individual. Now let's go on. But all this is entirely mechanical, automatic in man. If he lies, it means that he cannot help lying. So where is the free will in this? So if you believe in free will, that's a problem. There's no free will. And what if there's no free will? What directs man? What do we have? Well, we follow laws. The law of necessity, the law of self-reservation, the law of cause and effect, the law of inertia, and the law of following the path of least resistance. These laws direct man. And so what do we have? The power of understanding. So when we understand, that is for our freedom. Understanding does not mean we have free will, but understanding, when we apply reason and intuition, then we can follow really what is best for us. Because when we are in a sleep nature, we are become a victim of life. If you have free will, can you change from being sad, being lonely, being depressed to being happy, a social, having social interactions with people, expressing love and compassion? No, you must learn how to look at yourself. Then it's possible to change your nature, but you cannot do this by yourself. Again, but of course there are limits and bounds. Generally speaking, the being of modern man is the very inferior quality. Now, I'm reading this in Search of the Miraculous. Did you read this? Did you understand this? Gurdjieff talks about the idea of buffering. It's impossible to understand our nature because of buffers. What is a buffer? A buffer keeps us, as Gurdjieff would say, in a sleep semi-conscious state. Buffering prevents us to see ourselves because it's impossible to see oneself. He says, if we did, we'll go insane. So buffers are needed to help us to pretend everything is okay, that we don't have problems. But inwardly, you know you have problems because if you have social anxiety, or you have fear of speaking up, or fear of confrontation, or you are angry and expresses your anger and you cannot stop. Gurdjieff talks about there are three centers: the intellectual, the emotional, and the moving center. I call it the physical center or the moving center. Three centers: the intellectual, the emotional, and the moving center. We have all three. And so if you're highly intellectual, you are not going to be very social. You'll be very narcissistic. You might love science, mathematics, and even philosophy. And all these are you love these ideas, and you probably love computers, programming. Very intellectual. But however, you have social anxiety. You're afraid to express emotions. You don't like emotions. And you live in fear and doubt. Oh, however, you might be very Elon Musk, Bill Gates, uh, and many others who are highly intellectual. And as you were children in grade school and high school, you were the victim. You were bullied. Now you are highly successful, and Elon Musk, a good example. He hates human nature, and he's expressing it because he was bullied as a child, and now he's taking revenge. All right, let's go back to In Search of the Miraculous. He says this: if he tells the truth, it seems he cannot help telling the truth, and so on. it is with everything. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that before. Let's go back to, but of course there are limits and bounds. Generally speaking, the being of man, modern man is a very inferior quality, but it can be of such bad quality that no change is possible. This must be always, this must always be remembered. People whose being can still be changed are very lucky. So if you are in touch with your emotions and your intuition, it's possible to change. If not, and you must be dissatisfied with your life. You must be dissatisfied, unhappy with where you are, in spite of all your success. You must feel that there's something more to life and that you're not living, you're not fulfilled. But there are people who are definitely diseased, broken machines, whom nothing can be done. And such people are in the majority. If you think of this, you'll understand why only few can receive real knowledge. Their being prevents it. Only a few can receive real knowledge because their being prevents it. And this is where the level of effort comes in. We are born with into an environment. If you're born into an environment that your parents are very successful and there might be attorneys or in the computer industry, or they might be business people, entrepreneurs. And they also have an environment where they might have some caring and love and compassion, and they might teach you. They might love you. And so education is very important. And so you become just like they, an attorney or programmer or a doctor. That's the kind of environment you might grow up in. You're very fortunate. You might have an environment that is very abusive, aren't interested in education at all. And that's the environment I was born into. And so there's many types of environments that you're born into, but that's the environment. So if you've learned to apply your mind, or to apply physically at a higher level of effort, you might be successful. And if you never learn how to apply yourself and hate to apply yourself, you have a low level of effort, and you'll be stuck. Life is going to be very difficult. I just spoke with my nephew. My nephew is very successful in life. Uh, he has a home, several homes. He has money. He worked as a truck driver, and he belonged to a Teamster union, and he was able to save and invest money, and so he's very successful. He has a son, a grandson, who doesn't want to, who was dropped out of college, lives at home, doesn't work, and he has a very low level of effort. He, like many who are like that, are going to be victims of life and suffer and become homeless, unfortunately. So this work and how will help you learn how to look at yourself and increase your power of effort to understand your nature. Give me a call. Look down on my website, wayofspinoza.com. And if you liked, give me a comment. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye.